I think from that perspective, it's when we look at the way trauma sits in the body, within the way the nervous system is designed, it's better to think of the whole system rather than just one part, brain versus body. And if you think of the way people hold on to certain stories, it can be in their bodies as well as in their minds. And what we do is we try and encompass the whole being as such and let their bodies let go of needing to feel safe versus insecurity and non-safety. I think when I saw people reacting differently when I mentioned or I asked about what happened here, and then they would pause for a moment and not quite sure whether to go into the event or the feeling. And you could see the discomfort often arising in the way that they were either feeling it or touching it themselves, or even remembering, not really wanting to remember it, not really wanting to acknowledge it, that it was there. Then I realized there was something much deeper than just the tissue knitting together and closing a hole. I always find this quite interesting because if you think of what the nervous system is designed to do, it's designed to keep us safe. And then it'll obviously always remember incidents as things that's not good to go there. You know, when we think of a burn, it was pain, it was very dangerous, whatever it was that caused the burn. If it was a fall, it was our nervous system is designed then to warn us, don't go near those steps again in that way, or don't go near that hole because it's deep. You'll fall in, you'll hurt yourself. Then we have the complexity of the brain, which makes it sometimes things go into overdrive, and it protects a little too much. And then sometimes we can be stuck in a cycle of being fearful and not just remembering the situation that created the scar or the wound, but then fearing all things that are related, or all things that are in that area. So I think we kind of want the nervous system to go back to being a protector, but not overprotective. Yes, it's good to be warning, give us warning signs, but they don't have to be sirens going off every time there's a little bit of heat, or sirens going off every time there's a chance of falling. And that's why we try and encourage the nervous system in this work to be feeling safe, but go into a feeling of, can we revisit the event or the thing that caused this, and can we then go towards healing? I think because the soft and gentle nature of the MSTR technique, that we're approaching the body with asking permission, first of all, to be able to touch it in a certain way. Touching the person with lightness and with safety, often then they feel comforted, not invaded. I found that some touching too mechanically and with too much invasion causes guarding, and then that's counterproductive to healing, especially with traumatized people, is that then once their nervous system switches on the alert mode, then everything is guarded and not much effect takes place if they're in that mode. So it's quiet, stillness, softness, and gentleness is needed. The MSTR differs from the deeper work because deeper work is often, or more forceful work is often quite mechanical, and it goes into the body with pushing and almost a feeling of, we've got to resolve this, we've got to work it loose quickly, and we've got a certain time frame that we're working towards, whereas MSTR is led by the person on your table, and you're constantly checking in with that person to see how they're feeling or how they're responding versus what your agenda is in terms of working the tissue. And that's also the trauma-informed context plays a part in that. It's being the client being allowed to say what pace they need to go at and what speed is safe for them or comfortable for them. Too many things at once causes too many thoughts and too many feelings. So if we're just focusing on one thing at a time, it gives them a chance to sit in that moment. If there's an emotion coming up or a sensation within their bodies that they're not quite sure of or not comfortable with, then you've got time to sit with that within safety and ask them if they're okay, or if they're not, then guiding them through a place of noticing what they're feeling uncomfortable about it, and then back into a place of comfort and safety on their own. So it also is empowering because they're doing it within their own time frame and not in mine. I think the first changes I notice are the softening of the tissue around the scars, and then the feeling of looseness that clients report, saying, I don't feel that tight inside anymore, or I feel a feeling of openness, or fluid. Sometimes it's also warmth and fluid flow, prickliness, pins and needles. Just their smile, their joy when they see something different, or they see noticing something different within themselves. One that still sticks in my mind the most is a client who came to me with gallbladder. She had a gallbladder removed, and it started off with, the surgery was meant to be laparoscopic, and there was, I think, some complication in blood vessels when they were inside, and there was something that had obstruction that had formed, and they ended up having to do the traditional surgery anyway. So when she woke up, she had the massive scar as well as all the laparoscopic scars. And all of that healing had to take place. So it was the shock of that plus the healing time. When she came to me, it wasn't about the scars, though. It was about knee problems. She was struggling with pain in her knees. She couldn't bend. She felt unstable. And so it was more about loosening her fascia to see where there were tension lines. And I just said, out of interest, would you mind me working on your scars as well? And we can alternate between scar release and traditional fascia massage. And she said yes. And after the first MSTR session, she came down the stairs and she was smiling all the time. And I was curious, and I said, what is it that's making you look so happy? And she said, my knees aren't feeling sore. And proceeded to do about 5 squats in the driveway, checking her knees. He said, I haven't done this for years. And it was fun to see her experimenting on her own. I didn't have to ask her, can we test your knees? She just felt safe enough to do that on her own. And that was that. Usually I can see their processing in their eyes if there's rapid blinking. Or if they start to swallow more than usual. Sometimes the breath changes, or they close their eyes and they almost, sort of frown. And I notice that it's uncomfortable. And then I usually would ask, is there something that they're noticing that's different or uncomfortable? And then I would generally, they try and say, no, I'm fine, it's okay, we can carry on. But I would then pause and stop for a moment and say, there's time. So let's rather see what you were feeling about this situation. And if we can explore what it was that you were feeling before we move on, it's better for you emotionally and nervous system wise. It's almost in the middle so talking doesn't take a huge role or up to a huge amount of time in my work, because I generally work through the body, and I feel it's a bottom-up approach, that talk therapy goes to a certain point and then the body needs to be given time to do its own work and to heal. So once people see that you can touch them with safety and with comfort, then the MSTR work does a brilliant job, because we've got a very simple, very gentle tool in our hands that helps them feel differently about that tissue, and it softens it up, and it creates all of those things that we need under the surface, just to do its own job actually of healing, creating the fluid flow, the blood, circulation, the looseness in the tissue, the elasticity once more. And even increased sensation I noticed then creates another type of processing within the nervous system that, oh, this part of my body is actually still part of me. It's whole. It's not disconnected. It's not somewhere else. It still sits there. And then it starts to integrate back into the whole system once more. I think some trauma practitioners worry about, well, hands-on work in terms of when a body is traumatized, is that person going to almost re-traumatize in certain ways? And it's, if you know the way to work it or the way to approach the person, and you are trauma informed, then it will be within the creating of safety, the creating of empowerment within the person that you're with, that it's their choices, not yours. It's in the time frame that they're comfortable with, not yours. And if you've got those things, then there's very little risk of you doing any damage. So it's about knowing as much as you can about being trauma informed and treating your client with that within their boundaries of what they're okay with. Often people ask what the difference between a body that's quiet, body that feels safe. It's the bodies that are quiet, so sometimes shut down bodies. They could be in a state of freeze almost, and they've learned that quietness is safety for themselves, but it's not necessarily true safety. So sometimes once you start to explore with that person, I noticed you're very quiet in this and you're very still. Is that your normal nature, or is that something that you've acquired over time to keep yourself out of the limelight, or not answering too much because stillness and quiet was needed to enable you to feel safe? Sometimes people aren't outspoken because they were taught to, they were beaten maybe when they spoke, or they were told, verbally, abusively to shut up. And that was where quietness came from. Whereas there's a different place of quietness when you've chosen to be quiet. I'd say that they should actually do it. They should learn. They should see it for themselves to see what can be done. And when they see results and when they see how easy it is on them as well as on the client that they're seeing, and that the relationship that forms between client and practitioner is quite a strong one, in that there's trust. There's trust that the client trusts the person, that I'm not going to hurt you. I'm going to go within your needs and your boundaries, and then it's easy. And you're always checking in with them anyway, so it's fine.